Now that your husband is dead, grieve, pack your bags, and never come back. Eleanor Thompson never imagined that these cruel words would come from her own daughter-in-law just 3 days after burying her husband of 32 years. What happened next would expose a family conspiracy and reveal secrets that would change everything forever. At 69, Eleanor Thompson had spent 3 decades as a devoted wife to Richard, a successful construction company owner. She had been content to let him handle their finances while she managed their home and supported his business through countless dinner parties and community events. But Richard's sudden death from a heart attack had left her feeling vulnerable and alone. This is the story of how devastating betrayal became unexpected liberation, how a grieving widow discovered she was far from helpless, and how a husband's secret planning protected his wife even from beyond the grave. Because sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones you need protection from most. But to understand how Eleanor's world was about to be turned upside down, we need to go back to the months before Richard's death, when subtle changes in her family's behavior should have warned her of what was coming. The Thompson family home sat on 2 acres of prime real estate in Westchester County, New York, but it was more than just a house. It was a showcase for Richard's construction expertise. Every detail, from the hand-carved crown molding to the imported Italian marble floors, demonstrated the quality that had made Thompson Building and Design the go-to contractor for high-end residential projects throughout the Hudson Valley. The company's headquarters occupied a converted warehouse in nearby Mount Vernon, where the scent of sawdust and the sound of power tools created a symphony of productivity. Richard had built the business from nothing, starting with small renovations and gradually earning contracts for million-dollar custom homes. The walls of his office were covered with photographs of completed projects: a sprawling estate in Bronxville, a modernist masterpiece in Scarsdale, a historic restoration in Tarrytown. But what made Thompson Building and Design special wasn't just the luxury projects, it was Richard's commitment to sustainable practices and fair wages. He had been one of the first contractors in the area to embrace green building techniques, and his workers were paid well above industry standards. The company employed 43 people, from skilled carpenters to project managers, all of whom knew that working for Thompson meant job security and respect. Jason Thompson had always lived in his father's shadow, a reality that had shaped his adult life in ways Eleanor was only beginning to understand. As a child, Jason had shown artistic talent, dreaming of becoming an architect. But Richard had pushed him toward business, believing that creativity without financial acumen was a luxury the family couldn't afford. "You can't eat drawings, son," Richard had told Jason during one particularly heated argument about college majors. "Learn the business side first, then you can indulge your artistic interests." Jason had dutifully earned his MBA from NYU, but his heart was never in the corporate world. He had started several small businesses, a graphic design firm that folded after 18 months, a boutique consulting company that never found its footing, a tech startup that burned through investor money without producing results. Each failure had deepened his sense of inadequacy and fueled his resentment toward his father's success. Eleanor had watched her son struggle with depression and anxiety, but she had attributed his problems to the normal challenges of adulthood. She hadn't realized that Jason's financial failures had created a desperation that was slowly poisoning his relationship with his family, or that Victoria's constant comparisons to successful families were driving him toward increasingly desperate measures. Victoria Martinez had married Jason Thompson, believing she was joining a financially secure family. Her own childhood had been marked by her father's unemployment and her mother's struggles to make ends meet, creating a deep-seated fear of poverty that influenced every decision she made. "I grew up wearing hand-me-downs and eating generic cereal," Victoria had once told Eleanor during a rare moment of vulnerability. "I swore I'd never live like that again." When Jason's businesses began failing, Victoria felt betrayed. not just by Jason's incompetence, but by what she saw as Eleanor's indifference to their struggles. She would drive past the Thompson family home, with its manicured gardens and expensive cars, then return to their modest apartment, where she clipped coupons and worried about mortgage payments. Victoria's cruelty toward Eleanor stemmed from a toxic combination of fear, envy, and the belief that Eleanor's comfortable widowhood was somehow responsible for their financial problems. In Victoria's mind, Eleanor was hoarding resources that rightfully belonged to the younger generation, and Richard's death would simply be the natural transfer of wealth from old to young. "She lives like a queen while we struggle," Victoria would tell Jason during their increasingly frequent arguments. "It's not fair and it's not right." 3 days after Richard's funeral, Jason and Victoria would reveal their true intentions in a dinner conversation that would shatter Eleanor's world. But the seeds of their betrayal had been planted months earlier. The dinner took place on a Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after Richard's funeral. Eleanor had prepared Richard's favorite meal, pot roast, with vegetables, partly from habit and partly from a desperate need to maintain some normalcy in her shattered world. When Jason and Victoria arrived, their behavior was different from their usual visits. Jason kept checking his phone, and Victoria's eyes kept wandering around the room, as if she were appraising the furniture. "Mom, we need to talk," Jason began, his voice carrying a forced casualness that Eleanor had never heard before. "About, you know what happens now." Eleanor set down her fork, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What do you mean?" Victoria leaned forward, her expression suddenly sharp. "Look, Eleanor, I know this is hard, but we need to be practical here. Richard's gone, and things have to change. I don't understand what you're—" "The house, Mom," Jason interrupted, avoiding her eyes. "It's too big for one person, and the expenses. God, the property taxes alone must be killing you." Eleanor felt a chill. "Jason, this is my home. Your father and I built our life here." Victoria's mask of sympathy slipped. "Built it with his money in his name. Let's not pretend this was ever really yours." "Victoria," Eleanor gasped. "No, she's right," Jason said, his voice gaining strength from Victoria's boldness. "Dad left everything to me. Mom, the house, the business, all of it. We're not trying to be cruel, but facts are facts." Victoria stood up, her voice cold, with years of suppressed resentment. "Now that your husband is dead, grieve, pack your bags, and never come back. This house belongs to us now." Eleanor's first call the next morning was to Thomas Mitchell, Richard's attorney and longtime friend. Thomas had been handling the Thompson family's legal affairs for 20 years, and Eleanor had always found him to be a kind grandfatherly figure who treated her with genuine respect. "Eleanor, dear, I'm so sorry for your loss," Thomas said when she arrived at his office, his voice carrying the weight of his own grief. "Richard was more than a client to me. He was a friend. We played golf together for 15 years. Eleanor had always known that Thomas and Richard were close, but she hadn't realized how much Thomas had worried about Richard's concerns regarding Jason. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something that might be difficult to hear." Thomas said, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "Richard came to see me 6 months ago, and he was troubled. He'd discovered some irregularities in the business accounts, and he was worried about Jason's financial judgment." Thomas's voice carried a mixture of professional concern and personal pain. Richard loved Jason deeply, but he was also terrified that Jason's problems would destroy everything he'd built. "He made me promise to protect you, no matter what happened." Eleanor realized that Thomas wasn't just her lawyer. He was Richard's final gift to her, a guardian who understood both the legal and emotional complexities of her situation. Eleanor's next stop was Thompson Building and Design, where she found Mike Reynolds in the workshop teaching a young apprentice how to properly join 2 pieces of oak. Mike had been with the company for 12 years, starting as a carpenter and working his way up to foreman through skill, dedication, and an intuitive understanding of Richard's vision. "Mrs. Thompson," Mike said, setting down his tools and removing his safety glasses, "I've been expecting you." Mike was a man of few words, but Eleanor had always appreciated his straightforward manner. He had grown up in the Bronx, the son of a union electrician, and had learned early that hard work and honesty were the only reliable paths to success. "Mike, I need to understand what's been happening with the business," Eleanor said. "Jason claims he's been working here, but I don't remember Richard mentioning it." Mike's expression darkened. "Ma'am, Jason's been coming around for the past year, telling the crew he's going to be taking over when Mr. Thompson retires. He's been acting like he owns the place." Mike's loyalty to Richard ran deep, and Eleanor could see that Jason's behavior had troubled him. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband was a good man who built something special here. I'd hate to see it destroyed by someone who doesn't understand what it takes to earn respect." Eleanor's conversations with Thomas and Mike would reveal not just financial documents, but evidence of a conspiracy that had been months in the making. Eleanor's exploration of Thompson building and design revealed a world she had never fully understood. The company's current projects included a $1.2 million restoration of a 1920s estate in Rye, a sustainable housing development in White Plains, and a commercial renovation in downtown Mount Vernon. Each project required careful coordination of subcontractors, suppliers, and building inspectors, a complex dance that Mike Reynolds had been orchestrating with remarkable skill. "Your husband was ahead of his time," Mike explained as they walked through the workshop where custom millwork was being crafted for the Rye project. "He started using sustainable materials and energy-efficient techniques back when most contractors thought it was just a fad." Eleanor watched the craftsmen work their hands, moving with practiced precision as they shaped wood and fitted joints. The smell of sawdust and the sound of careful craftsmanship filled the air, creating an atmosphere of purposeful productivity that she found surprisingly comforting. "The Hendersons in Scarsdale just referred us to their neighbors." Mike continued, showing Eleanor a file thick with correspondence. "Word of mouth is our best advertising. People know that when they hire Thompson Building and Design, they're getting quality work and fair treatment." But Mike's expression grew troubled as he pulled out another file. "This is what's been worrying me, Mrs. Thompson. Jason's been telling clients that he's going to be taking over the business. The Hendersons specifically asked me about it last week. They wanted to know if the quality would remain the same under new management." Eleanor felt a chill as she realized that Jason hadn't just been embezzling money, he had been systematically undermining the company's reputation by positioning himself as the heir apparent without having earned the respect of clients or employees. At First Liberty Bank, Eleanor met with Sarah Williams, the branch manager, who had been handling the Thompson family's accounts for 8 years. Sarah was a woman in her 50s who had worked her way up from teller to manager through determination and financial expertise. "Mrs. Thompson, I have to tell you I've been losing sleep over this," Sarah said, her voice carrying genuine concern. "Your husband came to see me several times over the past year, and he was clearly worried about protecting your financial future." Sarah pulled out a thick file that documented Richard's careful financial planning. "He didn't just move money around randomly. He created a comprehensive strategy to ensure your security. Look at this." She showed Eleanor a series of documents that revealed Richard's methodical approach. "He established 3 separate accounts in your name, each with different purposes. This one is for daily expenses, this one is for emergencies, and this one is for long-term investments." Sarah's professional demeanor softened as she continued. "Mrs. Thompson, I've been in banking for 25 years, and I've never seen a husband plan so carefully for his wife's future." Richard knew exactly what he was doing, but Sarah's expression grew serious. "There's something else you need to know. Jason has been coming to the bank, asking questions about your accounts. He's been trying to get information about your financial situation, claiming he needs to help you manage your affairs." The evidence of Jason's financial crimes was more extensive than Eleanor had imagined. In Richard's office, she found a folder marked "Jason Financial Issues" that contained documentation going back 3 years. Your husband was meticulous about record keeping, Thomas explained. As they reviewed the documents, he discovered that Jason had been creating false invoices and inflating expense reports. Look at this. Thomas showed Eleanor a series of invoices for materials that had never been delivered, services that had never been performed, and expenses that had been drastically inflated. Jason was smart about it. He never took large amounts at once, but over time it added up to over $130,000. Eleanor felt sick as she realized the extent of her son's deception. How long has this been going on? Based on what we've found, at least 3 years, Thomas replied. But here's the thing that really worried Richard. Jason had started forging partnership agreements, making it look like he was an equal partner in the business rather than an employee. Mike Reynolds nodded grimly. He's been telling suppliers and subcontractors that he has authority to make decisions about the business. Some of our vendors have been billing Jason directly, thinking he's a legitimate partner. Eleanor realized that Jason's desperation to claim her house quickly wasn't just about securing his inheritance. It was about covering up his embezzlement before she discovered the full extent of his crimes. Eleanor's transformation began with her first visit to the construction site in Rye, where she met the Henderson family and saw firsthand the quality of work that Thompson Building and Design produced. "Mrs. Thompson, we're so sorry for your loss," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice carrying genuine sympathy. "Your husband was a wonderful man. He turned our vision into reality." Eleanor walked through the house that was being restored, seeing the careful attention to detail that had made Richard's company successful. Original hardwood floors had been refinished to their former glory period. Appropriate fixtures had been installed with modern efficiency, and every room reflected the perfect balance of historical authenticity and contemporary comfort. "This is what Richard built," Eleanor thought to herself. "This is what Jason wants to destroy." For the first time since Richard's death, Eleanor felt something other than grief and fear. She felt pride in what her husband had accomplished and determination to protect his legacy. "Mike," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks, "I want to understand everything about this business. I want to know how to protect what Richard built." Mike smiled, recognizing the steel in Eleanor's voice that reminded him of Richard himself. "Mrs. Thompson, I'd be honored to teach you." Eleanor's discovery of Jason's embezzlement would give her the ammunition she needed to fight back, but the confrontation would reveal family secrets that would change everything. The confrontation came sooner than Eleanor had planned. Jason and Victoria arrived at the house on a Saturday morning with a moving truck and 3 workers, apparently expecting to find Eleanor packing her belongings. Instead, they found her sitting calmly in the living room with Thomas Mitchell, Mike Reynolds, and a stack of legal documents. "What the hell is this?" Jason demanded, his face flushing with anger. "Mom, we gave you 2 weeks. You can't ignore what we told you." Eleanor's voice was steady, though her heart was pounding. "Jason, sit down. We need to talk about your work at the company." Victoria's eyes narrowed as she saw the legal documents. "Eleanor, if you think you can fight this, you're making a huge mistake. Jason is Richard's son. This house, the business, it all belongs to him." "Actually, that's not quite right," Thomas said, his voice carrying the authority of decades of legal practice. "But more importantly, we need to discuss Jason's unauthorized business activities." Mike Reynolds, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Jason, I've been running this company for your father for 12 years. I know every invoice, every contract, every expense. I know what you've been doing." Jason's face went white. "Mike, I don't know what you think you know, but—" "The Henderson job," Mike interrupted. "You billed them for premium hardwood flooring and delivered standard grade. You pocketed the difference, $200. That's not. I was trying to save money for the company by lying to our best clients." Mike's voice was quiet but firm. "Jason, I've been in this business for 25 years. I know the difference between cost saving and theft." Victoria stepped forward, her voice shrill with panic. This is ridiculous. You're ganging up on him because you're jealous that he's going to inherit the business. Nobody's inheriting anything, Eleanor said quietly. Jason, your father left the business to me, not to you. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Jason's labored breathing. Eleanor watched her son's face cycle through emotions, shock, denial, anger, and finally desperate calculation. That's impossible, Jason whispered. Dad wouldn't have done that. He knew I was counting on. He knew I needed. He knew you were stealing from him, Eleanor replied. He knew, and he was giving you a chance to come clean. But you never did. Jason's response revealed the depth of his desperation and the complexity of his motivations. You don't understand what it's like, he said, his voice breaking. Everyone expects me to be like Dad, but I'm not him. I can't just build an empire from nothing. Eleanor felt a stab of recognition. Jason, your father didn't expect you to be him. He expected you to be honest. Honest about what? About being a failure. About disappointing everyone who ever believed in me. Jason's voice rose with years of suppressed frustration. Do you know what it's like to have people constantly comparing you to Richard Thompson? To know that no matter what I do, I'll never measure up. Victoria grabbed Jason's arm. Don't let them manipulate you. You deserve this inheritance. You've worked for it. Worked for it? Mike's voice was incredulous. Jason, you've been here maybe 30 hours total in the past year. You show up, criticize the work, tell everyone you're going to change things, then disappear for weeks. I was learning the business, Jason protested. You were learning how to steal from it, Thomas said dryly. Jason, we have documentation of $130,000 in fraudulent charges over the past 3 years. You've been creating false invoices, inflating expenses, and forging partnership agreements. Eleanor watched her son's face crumble. As the weight of his crimes became clear, she realized that Jason's betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about years of feeling inadequate emotions that had festered into a toxic sense of entitlement. Eleanor looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw not the child she had raised with love and sacrifice, but a man who had been willing to make her homeless 3 days after her husband's funeral. The realization was heartbreaking, but it was also liberating. Jason, I need you to understand something, Eleanor said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I'm not taking anything away from you. I'm simply refusing to let you take everything away from me. Thomas spread the business documents across the coffee table. Jason, you have 2 choices. You can agree to repay the money you've stolen and accept that the business belongs to your mother, or you can face criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Jason's face went white. You can't be serious. You'd send your own son to prison. I'm not sending you anywhere, Eleanor replied. I'm giving you a choice. You can take responsibility for your actions, or you can face the consequences of your crimes. Victoria's mask of civility finally slipped completely. This is insane, Eleanor. You can't run a construction company. You don't know anything about business. You're right, Eleanor replied calmly. But I know about loyalty, and I know about honesty. And I know that Mike Reynolds has earned my trust in a way that you never have. Eleanor's confrontation with Jason and Victoria would mark the beginning of her new life. But the real transformation would come in the months that followed. In the weeks following the confrontation, Eleanor began the process of truly understanding the empire Richard had built and entrusted to her care. The legal resolution came faster than anyone expected when Jason's attorney, faced with overwhelming evidence of embezzlement and fraud, advised him to accept Eleanor's terms rather than risk criminal prosecution. Thomas Mitchell handled the negotiations with the careful attention to detail that had made him successful, but Eleanor could see that the situation was taking an emotional toll on him as well. Eleanor, I have to tell you something, Thomas said during one of their meetings. Richard made me promise to protect you, but I never imagined it would be from Jason. I've watched that boy grow up, and I keep thinking about what Richard would say if he could see what's happened. Thomas's voice carried the weight of personal disappointment. I remember when Jason was 12, and he used to come to the office with Richard. He was so proud of his father's work, so eager to learn. I don't know where we went wrong. Eleanor felt a pang of shared sadness. Thomas, we didn't go wrong. Jason made his own choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. The settlement agreement was signed on a gray December morning, exactly 3 months after Richard's death. Jason's signature was shaky, his face pale with the realization that his scheme had backfired spectacularly. Jason, Eleanor said quietly, as he prepared to leave Thomas's office, I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm disappointed, and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. Jason looked up at his mother with eyes red from exhaustion and shame. Mom, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Eleanor's partnership with Mike Reynolds evolved into something neither of them had expected. Mike had been prepared to work for Eleanor, as he had worked for Richard, but Eleanor had different ideas. Mike, I want to make you a partner, Eleanor announced during one of their weekly meetings at the construction site. You've been running this company for years. You deserve to have a stake in its success. Mike's weathered face showed surprise and then genuine emotion. Mrs. Thompson, I don't know what to say. You never expected to be recognized for your contributions, Eleanor asked. Mike, you've kept this company running, maintained relationships with clients, and protected the workers. You've earned this. The partnership agreement gave Mike a 25% stake in the company, along with formal recognition as general manager. Eleanor retained majority ownership and final decision-making authority, but Mike would have a voice in major decisions and a share of the profits. There's something else, Eleanor said. I want to establish a profit-sharing program for all the employees. Richard always said that the people who do the work should share in the success. Mike's eyes brightened. Mrs. Thompson, that would mean a lot to the crew. Most of these guys have been with the company for years, and they've never had anything like that. The profit-sharing program was announced at the company's annual Christmas party, held for the first time in years at the Thompson family home. Eleanor watched as Mike explained the program to the employees, seeing the respect and gratitude in their faces. This is what Richard would have wanted, Eleanor thought to herself. He built this company to take care of people, and now I'm going to make sure it continues to do that. The most unexpected development came when Victoria announced she was leaving Jason, unable to accept that their get-rich-quick scheme had failed so completely. Her departure revealed the true nature of their marriage and the extent to which financial desperation had driven their actions. Eleanor overheard the argument through the thin walls of Thomas's office building, where Jason and Victoria had come to sign the settlement papers. I didn't sign up for this. Victoria's voice was sharp with anger. I married you for security, not to be married to a criminal who can't even steal money successfully. Jason's response was heartbreaking in its desperation. Victoria, please, we can get through this. I'll pay back the money. I'll rebuild the relationship with Mom. We can start over. Start over with what Victoria's voice was cold with contempt. You're a failure, Jason. Your father knew it, your mother knows it, and now everyone else knows it too. I'm not going to waste my life being married to someone who can't provide for his family. Eleanor felt a mixture of sadness and relief as she listened to the conversation. Victoria's departure would be painful for Jason, but it would also remove the toxic influence that had been driving his increasingly desperate behavior. 2 weeks later, Eleanor received a call from Jason. His voice was different, quieter, more reflective. Mom, Victoria left, he said simply. She took the kids and moved to California. I don't know if she's coming back. Eleanor felt a pang of sympathy for her son. Jason, I'm sorry. I know you love her. I thought I did, Jason replied. But I think maybe I was just scared of being alone. And maybe Victoria was just scared of being poor. Neither of us was thinking about what was right. Eleanor's transformation from dependent wife to independent businesswoman was complete, but it had come at a cost that she was still processing. The stress of fighting her own family had taken a toll on her health, and she found herself exhausted and emotionally drained. But Eleanor also discovered unexpected strengths. She enjoyed the strategic thinking required for business decisions, the satisfaction of supporting her employees, and the freedom to make choices based on her own values rather than other people's expectations. "Mrs. Thompson, you've got a natural instinct for this," Mike told her during one of their site visits. "You understand what clients want, and you know how to treat people fairly. That's what made your husband successful, and it's what's going to make you successful." Eleanor had begun attending industry conferences and networking events, initially feeling intimidated by the male-dominated construction world. But she quickly discovered that her combination of business acumen and genuine concern for people made her a respected figure in the industry. "The thing about construction," Eleanor told a group of women entrepreneurs at a conference, "is that it's really about building relationships, not just buildings. If you treat people with respect and deliver quality work, the business takes care of itself." Eleanor's decision to move to the oceanfront cottage in Monterey wasn't just about escaping painful memories. It was about creating a new life that honored Richard's memory while building something meaningful for the future. The cottage was smaller than the family home in Westchester, but it was entirely hers, filled with furniture she had chosen and decorated according to her own tastes. She had found peace in solitude and strength in independence, while remaining open to new relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. 1 year after Richard's death, Eleanor stood in the garden of her oceanfront cottage in Monterey, California. The morning fog was lifting off the Pacific, revealing a day of brilliant sunshine and endless possibilities. Thompson Building and Design was thriving under Eleanor and Mike's partnership, with a waiting list of clients who wanted to work with the company. Eleanor had discovered that she preferred overseeing the business from California, making monthly trips to New York to meet with clients and check on projects. She had found peace in her new life, but she had also found purpose in helping other women facing similar situations. Eleanor's journey from vulnerable widow to independent woman was complete, but the real measure of her transformation would be seen in how she chose to use her newfound strength. Eleanor's story spread through her community and beyond, inspiring other women who had faced similar situations. She received letters from widows across the country who had been manipulated by family members, and she began to understand that her experience was part of a larger pattern of elder financial abuse. Thompson Building and Design became a model for employee-owned businesses, with Eleanor's profit-sharing program inspiring other companies to adopt similar practices. The company's success provided financial security for Eleanor and good jobs for dozens of employees and their families. Jason's repayment plan was proceeding on schedule, and Eleanor had begun to see signs that he was genuinely working to rebuild his life. He had started therapy to address his financial anxiety and relationship issues, and he was slowly learning to take responsibility for his actions. Eleanor's legal victory had also exposed the vulnerability of elderly women to financial exploitation by family members, leading to changes in estate planning practices and elder protection laws in several states. 3 years after Richard's death, Eleanor had become a recognized advocate for elder financial protection. She testified before state legislatures about the need for stronger safeguards against family financial abuse, and her story became part of training programs for attorneys and financial advisors. The Eleanor Thompson Foundation, established with a portion of her business profits, provided legal assistance to elderly individuals facing financial exploitation by family members. The foundation had helped dozens of people protect their assets and maintain their independence. Eleanor's relationship with Jason had slowly improved through carefully structured meetings and family therapy sessions. He had completed his repayment obligations ahead of schedule and had begun working for a sustainable building company in Oregon, using his MBA skills in a more ethical environment. "I'm learning that success isn't about how much money you make, but about how much good you can do," Jason had written in his latest letter. "I think Dad would be proud of the man I'm becoming, and I hope you are too." Eleanor had also formed new friendships with other women who had faced similar challenges, creating a support network that provided both practical advice and emotional understanding. Thomas Mitchell had become not just her attorney, but a trusted friend who shared her commitment to protecting vulnerable elderly individuals. Eleanor's transformation from dependent wife to independent businesswoman was complete. At 72, she had discovered talents and interests she never knew she possessed. She enjoyed the strategic thinking required for business decisions, the satisfaction of supporting her employees, and the freedom to make choices based on her own values. Eleanor had learned that security didn't come from depending on others, but from understanding her own capabilities and resources. She had found strength in solitude and joy in independence, while remaining open to relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Her life had become a testament to the possibility of reinvention at any age. Eleanor's story proved that it's never too late to discover your own strength, and that love without respect is not love at all. Her journey showed that sometimes the people who claim to protect us are the ones we need protection from, and that true security comes from within. 5 years after Richard's death, Eleanor Thompson stood on the deck of her Monterey cottage, watching the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and crimson. At 74, she had built a life that was entirely her own, filled with purpose, independence, and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. The morning mail had brought a letter from Jason, now a regular correspondence that Eleanor looked forward to. His latest letter contained photos of the sustainable housing project he was managing in Portland, Oregon, and news of his engagement to Sarah, a social worker who shared his commitment to helping others. "I'm learning that the best way to honor Dad's memory isn't to try to be him, but to be the best version of myself," Jason had written. "I think he would be proud of the man I'm becoming, and I hope you are too." Eleanor smiled as she read his words. Their relationship had been rebuilt slowly, through consistent actions rather than promises, and she was genuinely proud of the progress he had made. Thompson Building and Design had just completed its most ambitious project, yet a sustainable housing development in White Plains that would provide affordable homes for working families. Mike Reynolds had led the project with the skill and dedication that had made him an invaluable partner, and Eleanor had watched with pride as the company's reputation for quality and integrity continued to grow. "Mrs. Thompson," Mike had said during their last site visit, "I think Mr. Thompson would be amazed at what we've accomplished. This company is stronger now than it's ever been." The Eleanor Thompson Foundation had grown beyond her wildest expectations, now operating in 15 states and helping hundreds of elderly individuals protect themselves from financial exploitation. Eleanor's story had become a powerful tool for education and advocacy, showing others that it was possible to fight back against family betrayal and win. As the sun disappeared into the ocean, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Richard's death had been devastating, but it had also been the catalyst for discovering her own strength and capability. She had learned that she was not just someone's wife or mother. She was a complete person with her own gifts and potential. The cottage was quiet, except for the sound of waves against the shore. But Eleanor no longer feared solitude. She had learned the difference between being alone and being lonely, and she had chosen a life filled with purpose and dignity over one of dependence and diminished expectations. Tomorrow she would host a video conference with foundation chapters across the country. Next month, she would speak at a national conference on elder rights. And in the spring, she would attend Jason's wedding, where she would walk him down the aisle, not as a replacement for Richard, but as a mother who had learned to love her son while protecting herself from his mistakes. Eleanor Thompson had discovered that the best inheritance Richard could have given her wasn't money or property. It was the foundation for building her own life on her own terms. She had learned that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to show their true character. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and Eleanor smiled, knowing that Richard would be proud of the woman she had become. She had honored his memory not by remaining helpless, but by using his gifts to build something meaningful and lasting. Eleanor Thompson had started her story as a vulnerable widow facing betrayal by her own family. She was ending it as a successful businesswoman, advocate, and independent woman who had learned that true security comes not from depending on others, but from understanding your own worth and fighting to protect it. The ocean whispered its eternal song, and Eleanor listened, grateful for the journey that had taught her to trust her own voice above all others.